I stood in the doorway of that real estate office, watching my own children sign away my home, the house where I raised them, where their father died, where every memory of my life lived in the walls. They didn't see me yet, but when I stepped forward and slammed those documents on that table, the looks on their faces told me everything I needed to know. They thought I was a fool. They were wrong. If you've ever been betrayed by the people you trusted most, this story is going to hit you hard. My name is Corinne Voss. I'm 72 years old, and I'm about to tell you how my own children tried to steal my house from under me, and how I made sure they regretted every single second of it. But before we get into the revenge, and trust me, it's sweet, you need to understand how I got here. You need to know what they took from me. And you need to hear how a mother's love can turn into something far more powerful when that love is betrayed. This isn't just a story about real estate or legal documents. This is about family, about trust, about what happens when the people who are supposed to protect you decide you're not worth protecting anymore. So if you're ready for a story about family, betrayal, and justice, hit that like button right now, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment telling me, have you ever been betrayed by family? Because I want to hear your stories too. Let's get into it. My life wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Vernon and I bought our house in 1978, a modest three-bedroom colonial in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Richmond, Virginia. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't in some upscale subdivision with a homeowners association and perfectly manicured lawns, but it was ours. It had a wraparound porch where we'd sit on summer evenings watching the fireflies. It had a backyard with an old oak tree that had been there longer than the house itself, and it had enough space for the family we were building together. We painted the walls ourselves. Vernon insisted on doing it right, even though it took us 3 weekends, and we argued about the color of the kitchen at least a dozen times. We planted roses by the mailbox, red ones, because those were my favorite. And we hung a wooden swing from that oak tree for the kids, the kind that creaked when you pushed it too high but never broke, no matter how hard they tried. Silas came first. He was born in 1979, a colicky baby who screamed for the first 6 months of his life and then turned into a boy who never stopped moving, never stopped talking, never stopped scheming. Even as a kid, Silas was always looking for the angle, always figuring out how to get what he wanted. Vernon used to joke that he'd either end up a CEO or a con artist. Turns out, he was a little bit of both. Then came Cassidy in 1982. She was the opposite of Silas, quiet, sweet, desperate to please. She'd follow her older brother around like a puppy, doing whatever he told her to do, believing whatever he told her to believe. I used to worry about that. I used to tell Vernon, she needs to learn to stand on her own 2 feet. But Vernon would just smile and say, she'll figure it out. She never did. And finally, in 1985, we had Ramona, my baby. She had Vernon's gentle heart and my stubborn streak, and from the moment she was born, I knew she was different from the other two. She asked questions. She challenged things. She cared about people in a way that Silas and Cassidy never quite managed. Vernon worked as a machinist for 34 years at the same factory. He'd leave the house at 6 in the morning and come home at 4 in the afternoon, smelling like metal and oil, his hands rough and calloused. I worked as a school secretary at the elementary school down the street. The pay wasn't great, but I got summers off, and I was home when the kids got off the bus. We didn't have much, but we had enough. We had love. We had stability. And we had that house. Our house. The kids grew up there. Silas broke his arm falling out of that oak tree when he was 9. Cassidy had her first kiss on the front porch when she was 16. Ramona learned to ride a bike in the driveway, with Vernon running behind her, holding the seat until she was ready to go on her own. We celebrated every birthday, every holiday, every milestone in that house. We hung photos on the walls, school pictures, vacation snapshots, wedding photos. We marked the kids' heights on the doorframe in the hallway, little pencil lines with their names and ages next to them. That house wasn't just a building, it was our life. And then, 5 years ago, Vernon died. It was a heart attack. Sudden, no warning. He'd been feeling fine that morning, made me coffee, kissed me on the forehead, told me he loved me. By noon, he was gone. I thought my world had ended. The man I'd spent 47 years with, the man who knew me better than I knew myself, was just gone. And I was alone in that house, surrounded by 50 years of memories and no idea how to move forward. The kids came for the funeral. They stayed for a few days, helped me sort through Vernon's things, made sure I was eating, and then they left. Back to their own lives, their own problems. Silas was living 2 hours away, working in sales, always chasing the next big deal. Cassidy was on her second divorce, drowning in credit card debt she refused to talk about. Ramona was the only one who stayed close, who called me every week, who drove over on Sundays to have lunch with me. But even she had her own life, her own family. Her daughter Ivy was starting high school, and Ramona was busy with work and PTA meetings and all the things that come with raising a teenager. So I was alone, but I managed. I kept the house clean. I paid my bills on time. I had my routines: book club on Tuesdays, garden club on Thursdays, church on Sundays. I wasn't falling apart. I wasn't a burden to anyone. At least, that's what I thought. It started about a year after Vernon died. Silas began showing up unannounced. He'd knock on the door on a Saturday afternoon, walk in without waiting for me to answer, and start looking around like he was inspecting the place. "Mum, this gutter's sagging," he'd say. Or, "Mum, when's the last time you had the furnace serviced?" Or, "Mum, are you sure you can afford to keep this place up?" At first I thought he was just being helpful, concerned. But then the questions started getting more pointed. "What's your monthly budget look like? Are you keeping track of your expenses? Have you thought about what happens if something major breaks, like the roof or the water heater?" I told him I was fine. I had Vernon's pension, my social security, and a modest savings account. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't destitute either. I could handle my own finances. But Silas wouldn't let it go. "Mom, you're 72 years old. You're living in a 3-bedroom house by yourself. Don't you think that's a little much? What if you fall and can't get to the phone? What if someone breaks in?" I told him I had a medical alert bracelet. I told him I had good locks on the doors. I told him to stop treating me like I was helpless. But he didn't stop. And then Cassidy started chiming in. She'd call me on the phone, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Mum, Silas is right. You're getting older. Don't you think it would be easier to move into a smaller place? Maybe one of those nice senior communities? You'd have people around, activities, someone to check on you." I shut that down fast. I wasn't going anywhere. That house was my home. It was where I'd raised my children, where I'd spent my entire adult life. It was where Vernon's memory lived in every corner, every piece of furniture, every photograph on the wall. I wasn't leaving, but they didn't stop. The conversations became more frequent, more insistent. And then, about 6 months ago, Silas brought paperwork. He showed up on a Tuesday afternoon with a folder full of documents and a pen. "Mum, sit down," he said, spreading the papers out on my kitchen table. We need to talk about something important. Cassidy was with him. So was Ramona, though she looked uncomfortable, like she didn't want to be there. "What is this?" I asked. "It's a power of attorney," Silas said. "It's just a precaution. In case something happens to you, if you get sick or if you have an accident, we can handle things without having to go through the courts. It's what Dad would have wanted." I stared at the papers. "I don't need this. I'm perfectly capable of handling my own affairs." "Of course you are," Cassidy said quickly. "But what if something happens? What if you're in the hospital and someone needs to pay your bills or make decisions? This just makes it easier." "It's the responsible thing to do, Mum," Silas added. "Everyone does this. It's standard." I looked at Ramona. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I don't know," I said. "Mum." Silas's voice got firmer. "Dad would have wanted you to be protected. He would have wanted us to be able to take care of you if something happened. Don't you trust us?" And there it was. The guilt. The manipulation. I trusted them. They were my children. So I signed. God help me, I signed. 3 months later, I got a phone call that changed everything. It was a woman named Quincy Merritt. She said she was a real estate agent, and she wanted to schedule a final walkthrough of my property before closing. "Closing?" I said, my heart starting to pound. "What closing?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, "Mrs. Voss, your children didn't tell you? The house is being sold. The closing is scheduled for next Tuesday at 2 o'clock. I felt the floor drop out from under me. "There must be some mistake," I said, my voice shaking. "I didn't agree to sell my house. According to the paperwork, your son, Silas Voss, has power of attorney and authorized the sale on your behalf. The buyers have already secured financing. Everything's set." I hung up the phone and immediately called Silas. It went straight to voicemail. I called again. And again. Nothing. I called Cassidy. Voicemail. I called Ramona, and she finally picked up. "Mom?" Her voice was quiet, hesitant. "Ramona? What the hell is going on? Someone just called me and said my house is being sold." There was a long silence. Then I heard her start to cry. "Mum, I didn't want to do this, but Silas said it was for the best. He said you couldn't take care of the house anymore, that you were going to hurt yourself, that we needed to act before something terrible happened." "Before what?" I shouted. "Before I had a say in my own life. Before you bothered to ask me what I wanted." "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. But Silas said—" "I don't care what Silas said." I was shaking now, rage and fear coursing through me. "This is my house, my life. How could you do this to me?" She didn't have an answer. She just kept crying. I hung up. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in Vernon's chair, the old recliner in the living room that still smelled faintly like him, and stared at the walls, at the photos, at the life we'd built together. They thought I was weak. They thought I was senile, incapable, a burden. They thought they could just erase me. But I wasn't done yet. The next morning, I called Lucinda Crane. Lucinda was an attorney I'd known from church. She was in her 50s, sharp as a tack, with a reputation for not taking any nonsense from anyone. I'd always liked her. I told her everything. The power of attorney, the phone call from the real estate agent, the fact that my own children were selling my house without my knowledge or consent. She listened quietly, taking notes. And when I finished, she said 4 words that changed everything. "Corinne, we can fight this." Lucinda got to work immediately. She requested copies of all the paperwork, the power of attorney, the sale agreement, everything. And as she dug into it, she found the first crack in Silas's plan. The power of attorney he had you sign, she explained, gives him authority to manage your finances if you become incapacitated. But you're not incapacitated, Corinne. You're fully competent, which means he doesn't have the authority to sell your house without your explicit consent. So the sale is illegal? Not exactly. It's complicated. But we have grounds to challenge it, and if we move fast, we can stop it before the closing happens. I felt a flicker of hope for the first time in days. But Lucinda wasn't done. There's something else, she said, pulling out another document. I did some digging into your late husband's estate. Did Vernon ever mention setting up a trust? I frowned. A trust? No, I don't think so. Well, he did. A small one, established about 15 years ago. It holds a 25% stake in your house. My heart skipped a beat. What? Why would he do that? According to the documents, the trust was set up for the benefit of your grandchildren, Ivy and Hollis. Vernon wanted to make sure they had something, a piece of the family legacy. The trust is irrevocable, which means it can't be dissolved. And because the beneficiaries are minors, any decision regarding the property, including selling it, requires the consent of their legal guardians. I stared at her. So Silas can't sell the house without Ramona's permission? Or without permission from Silas himself, since Hollis is his son? Exactly. And I'm guessing neither of them knew about this trust. They didn't. I was sure of it. This changes everything, Lucinda said, a rare smile crossing her face. They can't close this sale without the consent of the trust beneficiaries. And if we inform the buyers and the title company about this, the whole deal falls apart. For the first time since that phone call from Quincy Merritt, I felt like I could breathe. But Lucinda still wasn't finished. Over the next few days, she kept digging, and what she found made my blood run cold. Corinne, I need you to look at these, she said, sliding a stack of bank statements across her desk. I picked them up, squinting at the numbers. They were statements from Vernon's pension account, the account that was supposed to be sending me monthly payments. What am I looking at? I asked. Withdrawals, Lucinda said. Large ones. Over the past 2 years, nearly $40,000 has been taken out of this account. I felt sick. I didn't authorize any withdrawals. I know, but someone did. And they forged your signature to do it. She pulled out another document, a withdrawal authorization form with my name signed at the bottom. Except it wasn't my signature. It was close. But the loops were wrong. The slant was off. Someone had tried to copy my handwriting, and they'd done a decent job. But it wasn't me. Who did this? I whispered. Lucinda's expression was grim. The withdrawals were all deposited into an account belonging to Silas Voss. I don't remember much of what happened next. I think I started crying. Or maybe I started screaming. All I know is that Lucinda had to calm me down, had to remind me to breathe. My son, my firstborn, the boy I'd raised, the boy I'd loved, the boy I'd sacrificed for. He'd stolen from me. This isn't just unethical, Corinne, Lucinda said quietly. This is fraud. Criminal fraud. If you want to press charges, we have enough evidence to make a case. I looked at her, my hands shaking. What happens if I do? He could face jail time, fines, a criminal record. It would destroy his life. He tried to destroy mine, I said. Lucinda nodded. Then let's make sure he pays for it. The closing was scheduled for 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon at Quincy Merritt's office downtown. I arrived at 1:55. Lucinda was with me, carrying a briefcase full of documents, evidence, legal filings, everything we needed. Ramona was there too, standing by my side for the first time in months. She'd been devastated when I told her about the trust, about the money Silas had stolen, and she'd agreed to help me stop him. When I walked into that office, the room went silent. Silas was sitting at the head of the conference table, looking smug in his cheap suit and his two shiny shoes. Cassidy was next to him, fidgeting with her phone, avoiding eye contact. Quincy Merritt, the real estate agent, looked confused and uncomfortable. And across from them sat a young couple. The buyers, probably in their early 30s, wide-eyed and clearly sensing that something was very wrong. "Mum?" Silas stood up, his face going pale. "What are you doing here?" "I live here," I said coldly, my voice steady. "Or did you forget?" Cassidy's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I walked to the table, my heels clicking on the tile floor, and slammed the briefcase down in front of Silas. "You want to sell my house?" I said, looking him dead in the eye. "Let's talk about that." Lucinda took over. She was calm, professional, and absolutely ruthless. "Mr. Voss, Ms. Voss," she began, addressing Silas and Cassidy, "you've attempted to sell a property using a power of attorney that does not grant you the authority to do so. Mrs. Corinne Voss is fully competent, has not been declared incapacitated, and has not consented to this sale. Furthermore, you've failed to disclose that 25% of this property is held in an irrevocable trust for the benefit of Ivy Voss and Hollis Voss, both minors, who cannot consent to this transaction." Silas's face went from pale to red. There's no trust. Dad never set up a trust. That's ridiculous." "There is," Ramona said quietly, her voice shaking but firm. "Dad set it up when Ivy was born. I have the paperwork. Lucinda has the paperwork. And you can't sell this house without my consent as Ivy's guardian." Silas turned on her, his eyes blazing. "You knew about this? And you didn't tell me?" "I didn't know until 3 days ago," Ramona shot back. "Because nobody told me. Just like nobody told Mom you were selling her house." "This is insane," Cassidy said, her voice rising. "We're doing this for her own good. She can't take care of that house anymore. She's going to fall or forget to pay a bill or—" "Or what?" I interrupted. "Or live my life the way I want to. Or make my own decisions." "Mum, you're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking perfectly clearly, Cassidy. Clearer than I have in months. And I know exactly what you two have been doing." Lucinda opened the briefcase and pulled out the bank statements. "Let's talk about the pension fund," she said, sliding the papers across the table. Silas's eyes widened. "Over the past 2 years," Lucinda continued, "nearly $40,000 has been withdrawn from Mrs. Voss's pension account. Withdrawals that she did not authorize. Withdrawals that were deposited into your personal account, Mr. Voss." The room exploded. Cassidy gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Quincy Merritt looked horrified. The young couple stood up, clearly ready to bolt. "That's a lie!" Silas shouted, his voice cracking. "I never—" "Bank records don't lie," Lucinda said calmly, pulling out more documents. "Forged signatures, unauthorized withdrawals. It's all here. And Mrs. Voss is prepared to press criminal charges for fraud and elder financial abuse." Silas stared at the documents, his hands shaking, his face going from red to white. "You can't do this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm your son." "And I'm your mother," I said, my voice breaking. "The mother you tried to rob. The mother you tried to throw out of her own home." "I was trying to help you," he shouted. "You're old, Mum. You can't take care of yourself anymore. I was doing what was best for you." "No," I said, standing up. You were doing what was best for you. You wanted my house. You wanted my money. And you thought I was too weak, too stupid, too senile to stop you. Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't care. You were wrong. Quincy Merritt cleared her throat. I think it's safe to say this sale is not going to proceed. I'll inform the title company and the buyer's lender. I'm very sorry for the confusion. The young couple left quickly, whispering to each other. Quincy followed them out, leaving just me, Lucinda, Ramona, Silas, and Cassidy in the room. Lucinda turned to Silas. You have two options, she said. Option 1. You return every penny you stole from your mother's pension fund. You relinquish any and all claims to her estate. You sign a document agreeing never to contact her again unless she initiates contact. And you stay out of her life. And option 2? Silas asked, his voice hollow. Option 2. We press criminal charges. You'll be arrested, prosecuted, and likely convicted of fraud and elder abuse. You'll face jail time, fines, and a permanent criminal record. Your career will be over. Your reputation will be destroyed. Silas looked at me, his eyes pleading. Mum, please. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Please don't do this. I looked at him, really looked at him. At the son I'd raised, the boy who'd broken his arm in the oak tree, the man who'd stood at his father's funeral and promised to take care of me. And I felt nothing. You have until the end of the week to return the money, I said. After that, Lucinda files the charges. Silas returned the money, all of it. He signed the documents, and then he disappeared from my life. Cassidy tried to apologize, tried to explain that she'd just been following Silas's lead, that she didn't know about the stolen money. But I couldn't forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Ramona stayed. She helped me change the locks on the house. She helped me update my will, making sure that Silas and Cassidy were explicitly excluded. She helped me set up new safeguards, new bank accounts, new passwords, new legal protections, so that nothing like this could ever happen again. And slowly, painfully, I started to rebuild my life. I'm still in my house. Vernon's house. Our house. I still sleep on my side of the bed, even though his side stays empty. I still tend the roses by the mailbox. I still sit on the wraparound porch with my coffee every morning, watching the world wake up. Ivy comes to visit me now. She's 16. Smart and strong and nothing like her uncle. She asks me about Vernon, about the house, about the trust he set up for her. And I tell her stories about her grandfather, about the life we built, about the importance of protecting the people you love. Hollis doesn't come around. Silas won't let him. But I hope that one day, when he's older, he'll understand what happened. And maybe he'll come find me. I think about Vernon a lot, about the trust he set up, the safeguard he put in place to protect me even after he was gone. He knew. Somehow, he knew that I might need protection, that I might need someone to look out for me when he couldn't anymore. And he made sure I had it. That's what love is. It's not just being there when things are easy. It's making sure the people you care about are safe, even when you're not around anymore. Silas and Cassidy thought I was weak. They thought I'd just roll over and let them take everything. They were wrong. So if you're watching this and you've ever been underestimated, ever been betrayed, ever been told you don't matter, remember this. You're stronger than they think. You deserve to fight for what's yours. And you don't have to face it alone. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me about your own experiences with family betrayal, and subscribe if you haven't already. I've got more stories coming. And trust me, you don't want to miss them. Take care of yourselves. And remember, never let anyone make you feel small. I'll see you in the next one.